Rain sifted down over Midtown, turning the glass skin of Blackwood Tower into a pale mirror. On the 62nd floor, the CEO's office looked like discipline made visible walnut desk, slate grey carpet, floor-choosing windows that put the city at his feet. Adrian Blackwood stood at the glass, hands in his pockets, a rocks glass untouched on the credenza behind him. His grandfather, Kingmaker, unchallenged patriarch, had texted that morning, "We need stability in the Blackwood family." Stability was code for a marriage that photographed well and calmed a board of directors. The door opened with a soft click. "Your guest is here," said Donovan. His longtime chief of staff. "Send her in," Adrian said. She stepped through with rain on the ends of her hair and a thrift store coat darkened at the shoulders. Claire Evans, 26, freelance copywriter. Daughter of a heart patient at St. Joseph's. No pedigree. No PR polish, just steady brown eyes and a spine that didn't fold. "Thanks for coming," Adrian said, motioning to the chair across from his desk. "Have a seat." Claire set down her tote and sat straight. "Your assistant said there was a special offer." "I have no idea what that means." "It means I have a proposal," Adrian replied, voice even. "One that solves your problem and mine." Her chin lifted a fraction. "My problem?" He opened a slim folder. "St. Joseph's has quoted your mother's surgery at $148,000. You've got a $32,000 banknote. With penalties, you're staring at about $190. I can clear it today." Color rose in her cheeks, not embarrassment so much as anger at being seen too clearly. "Did you bring me up here to recite my debts?" "To outline the terms," he said. "I'll cover the hospital and the loan in full. In exchange, you'll marry me on paper for 12 months. The office went quiet enough to hear the rain tick at the glass. "You're joking," Claire said, a dry laugh catching in her throat. "I'm practical," Adrian said. "The board wants a family man at the helm. I don't have time for a long performance. I need a contract with a clean end date. 1 year, then we part ways. You get your mother's operation. I get the optics that keep this company steady. Why me? You're unaffiliated, no scandals, no appetite for fame," he said. "And you're too proud to turn your life into a circus. I need someone who won't." Claire stood and walked to the window. New York blurred into silver streaks below. "Do you understand how predatory that sounds?" "I'm not forcing anything," he said. "You can walk out. I won't contact you again. What else is buried in the fine print?" Her voice was cool now, controlled. "I'm not selling my body to fix a balance sheet. I'm not buying anyone," Adrian replied. "It's a contract marriage without a physical clause. Separate bedrooms, separate locks. We make a few appearances together. Legal drafts the rest. I'll respect every boundary, and your family, the press." "My family breathes contracts," he said. "As for the press, there's a team to manage them. If anyone comes after you, they go through me first." "Money?" she asked, swallowing. "Hospital wiring today. The loan is gone in 48 hours. You'll also receive $50,000 over the year, paid quarterly to avoid attention. If you exit early, there's a $200,000 breach penalty and a standard NDA." She let out a humorless breath. "Very CEO of you." "You came for a special offer, Ms. Evans," he said. "This is the only one that gets your mother into surgery on time." He slid an envelope across the desk. "Draft agreement. Take it to a lawyer. No traps, She stared at the envelope like it weighed more than paper. She'd spent months writing ad copy at 2 in the morning, begging grants, refreshing her checking account only to see the same stubborn number. A contract could be a life raft, or a pair of handcuffs. "Do you believe in love, Mr. Blackwood?" she asked before she could stop herself. His grey eyes flickered, then steadied. "I believe in duty, things you can sign, enforce, deliver. Love makes people careless. Maybe that's why you prefer contracts," she said quietly. "Maybe," he said. "Do you?" "I do," Claire said. "But right now, I need my mum to live." They let the rain answer for a moment. Adrian slid a card toward her. "You have 3 days. After that, the offer expires." "Why 3? "The hospital needs a surgical slot," he said. Then softer, "And I don't want you stuck in limbo any longer than you already have been." She nodded and clutched the envelope to her chest. "I'll let you know. Donovan will see you out," Adrian said. He paused, an almost imperceptible hitch. "Don't let the rain soak through." It was nothing, a reflex, a scrap of politeness, but when the door closed behind her, Claire pulled her collar higher anyway. In the elevator, she slid the draft free, contract marriage term. 12 months, clean sections. Precise language, her signature line blank. His printed name already there, Adrian Blackwood. On the marble lobby, Donovan handed her a compact umbrella. "Mr. Blackwood asked me to give you this." "Thank you," she said, startled by the smallness of the gesture against the size of the ask dot outside. She popped the umbrella and stepped into the wet glow. Across the avenue, 2 college kids splashed through a puddle and shrieked like the world might never touch them. Freedom has its own sound. It pricked something tender in her. That night in her studio in Queens, Claire called St. Joseph's. If funds cleared, could they move the surgery up? The nurse said yes next week. If she could confirm payment, Claire set the phone down and spread the draft on her thrifted table. She highlighted privacy clauses, termination language, payment schedules. Everything was neat and bloodless, the vocabulary of people who never let their lives spill. She leaned her forehead to the cool window. "I believe in love," she had said. She still did. But the belief would have to stand behind another word tonight. Survive. 62 floors up. Adrian stood where she had, the city a restless constellation below. He told himself the mantra that had built his empire: discipline, duty, no emotion. Still, somewhere under the starched shirt and the practiced control, his heartbeat had slipped a half step when she walked in and left a few raindrops on his perfect carpet. 3 days. 1 year, 1 signature, and all the untidy, unprincipled things a contract could never name waited outside the margins, patient as rain. Claire signed on a Tuesday morning. No violins, no fireworks, just the scratch of a pen and Donovan's calm voice confirming wire transfers. St. Joseph's called an hour later. The surgery could move to next week. Claire thanked the nurse, sat very still, and realized her hands were trembling. "From this point forward," the Blackwood attorney said, sliding over a slim packet, "all public statements go through me. The wedding is Saturday. Private ceremony. Controlled guest list. Media gets a pre-cleared image set and a 2-paragraph statement. No interviews. Saturday arrived fast, like a skipped page. The chapel was old stone tucked between brownstones on the Upper East Side. Pews strung with white roses and eucalyptus. Claire wore a simple satin gown. PR had chosen clean lines, Nothing that would start a trend. The makeup artist called the look timeless. Claire called it unrecognizable and said thank you anyway. When the side door opened, Adrian stood there in a black tux, bow tie crisp. His gaze moved over her and caught just enough to knock the breath in her chest sideways. He offered his arm. She placed her hand on it. They walked. The minister spoke the well-worn words. Their yeses sounded like executive approvals. The ring-thin platinum, cool on her skin, slid onto her finger. Applause rose, polite and efficient. Somewhere behind them, a camera shutter clicked exactly as scheduled. On the steps afterward, with rose petals floating down like confetti that had forgotten how to party, Adrian leaned in just enough to be heard. Thank you for being on time. She huffed something that might have been a laugh. You too. The reception was a glass box 40 stories up, New York glittering under them like spilled jewelry. Waiters served the room with champagne. Guests moved in calibrated circles toward the couple, offering practiced congratulations and sharper assessments behind their eyes. Claire introduced herself the way PR had suggested, first name. Quick smile, deflect to a safe topic, keep the ring in frame. There were toasts. There were photos. There was a choreographed cheek kiss that landed at the perfect angle. Flashbulbs popping in deference. Near the head table sat a woman with silver hair, swept into a French twist, and a strand of pearls the size of marbles. Eleanor Blackwood didn't stand when Claire approached. She didn't need to. Authority sat with her. Claire, she said, voice smooth as cut glass. We all understand what today is. Yes, ma'am, Claire said. The ma'am felt right, even if it tasted like a coin on her tongue. The Blackwoods don't dislike contracts, Eleanor went on with a small, almost kind smile. We respect them. Things are easiest when everyone does their part. It was a benediction and a warning, tucked into the same sentence. Claire kept her smile in place. I understand. Adrian appeared at her elbow like a shadow returning to its owner. Everything all right? Fine, Claire said. Thanks for walking me over. His mouth tilted a fraction. Consider it part of the job description. They resumed the circuit handshakes, photos, a weather chat with a senator, the quick, neat ceremony of wealth, behaving as if nothing had ever surprised it. Blackwood Manor sat in Westchester like a postcard. No one mailed white columns. A long drive lined with beech trees, a hush that wanted to be called legacy. Inside, the hallways were gallery quiet. Oil portraits watching like they held shares of the company. The housekeeper, Mrs. Mason, met them at the door and led Claire upstairs. Your room, Mrs. Blackwood, she said, then caught herself. Miss Evans, apologies. A gentle flush rose in her cheeks. It's a habit. It's okay, Claire said. It wasn't, and it was, all at once. The bedroom was sunlit, even at dusk. White linens turned down, a vase of hydrangeas on the dresser. A key sat on the nightstand, brass and heavy. Attached to a leather tag with an embossed C at the end of the hall is Mr. Blackwood's suite, Mrs. Mason said. The library between you. If you need anything, press 1 on the house phone. Kitchen's down the back stairs. Thank you, Claire said. The room smelled like fresh laundry and lemon oil. Home, if home were somewhere you had to whisper to Dot at 7. Donovan knocked and guided Claire to the office for a post-wedding brief. Adrian was there, jacket off, tie loosened a 1/4 inch. Sleeves rolled once, because he was not the kind of man who rolled them twice. He stood behind the desk. The city trailed the windows like an afterthought. "Next week," he said, nodding to the screen. "Charity gala Wednesday, lunch with a potential partner Friday. Sunday morning, magazine shoot in the South Garden. PR will send talking points." Claire wrote it down. He continued, "Boundaries. No photos in either bedroom. No mention of my family outside what's already public record. If a reporter approaches you directly, you call Donovan. That's not a suggestion. And mine." Claire asked. Adrian paused. "Yours." "My boundaries," she said. "I keep my freelance work. I need one night a week that isn't for optics. No car trailing me. I want to breathe." He waited. "Agreed within reason. You'll take a driver after dark." "I'm not negotiating that." "Fine," Claire said. "And I'll be at St. Joseph's overnight before and after the surgery." Donovan set aside a private room. Adrian said. His voice dropped a notch. "If you want me there, I'll go." "You don't have to," I said, if he cut in, not unkindly. He glanced past her at the window. "You're not doing this alone." The sentence landed with a density that didn't match its length. Claire didn't know where to put it into the column labeled contract, or the one she wasn't allowed to name. Donovan produced a small envelope. "Bank, paperwork, and a phone with a secure line. Your quarterly stipend will deposit there." When Claire powered on the phone, the screen flashed Claire Blackwood. Her stomach tipped. "You can change the display name," Adrian said, as if he'd felt the tilt. "No one's asking you to carry my last name anywhere it isn't required." "Thanks," she said. It came out thin. The brief ended. Claire stood. "Good night, Mr. Blackwood." "Adrian is fine," he said, "when it's just us." She nodded once. "Good night, Adrian." Night moved through the manor in soft steps. Claire set the ring on a tray and called her mum, who sounded sleepy and hopeful. "You sounded happy," her mum said. It wasn't a question. I sounded okay, Claire answered, staring out at the dark lawn. "And it's going to be okay." When she hung up, the silence pressed in deep, old, and upholstered. She slid beneath the sheets and stared at the ceiling. Between breath and breath, she saw small flashes of the day. The ring, Eleanor's pearls. Adrian's hand steady under hers as they turned to face the cameras. Down the hall, Adrian sat in his library with the lights low, his cufflinks in a dish and his wedding band turning idly between his fingers. On paper, he'd delivered what the board wanted: narrative, optics, order. Yet there was a hollow space the contract didn't cover, shaped exactly like the sentence he'd said without planning to. "You're not doing this alone." He slipped the ring on, stood, and clicked off the lamp. The house settled. They slept at opposite ends of the hallway, between them a thick rug, a thin truce, and a carefully drafted agreement. In the morning, the pre-cleared wedding photos would hit the wire. In the morning, the hospital would hold a surgical slot. In the morning, the machine would hum. Tonight. The manor kept their secrets, and the contract kept its place on a shelf, heavy with all the lines it couldn't write. The manor woke early. Claire learned the rhythm by the second morning. The soft clatter of pans downstairs at 6. Sprinklers ticking on across the south lawn at 6:15. A car pulling away from the motor court at 6:40 because Adrian believed in beating traffic as a matter of policy. By 7, sunlight spilled across the runner in the hallway like a gold ribbon no one dared step on. She kept to her side of the house. The room smelled like laundry and lemon oil. the sheets tucked so tight you could bounce anxiety off them. She made her own bed anyway. It felt like staking out a small territory in a country where the map had already been drawn. At 8, she followed the scent of coffee to the kitchen. Mrs. Mason, in a blue apron, looked up and smiled like she'd been waiting for company for years. "Good morning, Miss Evans." "Morning." Claire hovered. Should I help?" "You'll insult me if you try," Mrs. Mason said, pouring coffee into a stoneware mug. "Toast." "With too much butter," Claire said, and the housekeeper's grin deepened. They ate at the scarred prep table, not the formal dining room that made conversation sound like it needed a gavel. For 10 minutes, the manor felt almost human. "Mr. Blackwood left at sunrise," Mrs. Mason said, refilling the mug. "He said he'll be back late." "Of course he did," Claire murmured, and stared at the ring on her finger until it blurred. The first week was a series of practiced appearances and careful silences. On Wednesday, the charity gala, a metallic dress that looked more expensive than a month's rent and a step-and-repeat, that smelled like hairspray and ambition. Claire smiled, answered soft questions, and kept her hand light on Adrian's sleeve. He was present in the perfectly literal sense, standing there, saying the right thing, his profile cut from ice. On Friday, the business lunch, a steakhouse where the lighting was as flattering as the prices were not. Adrian's conversation hummed at a frequency that had nothing to do with her market share. Regulatory lanes, a new fund in Dubai. When the server set down a plate of oysters, Claire nearly laughed. She'd grown up on tuna casseroles and church potlucks. Oysters looked like something you apologized to and let go. "Don't worry," Adrian said, deadpan, catching her expression. "No one's grading your technique." "You say that like there's a rubric," she shot back. "There's always a rubric," he said. But his mouth tilted, and that tiny lift felt like a crack in PERMAFROST. By Sunday, the magazine crew arrived at dawn to claim the South Garden. Photographers spoke in adjectives. The stylist pinned the back of Claire's dress with surgical precision, then set a bouquet in her hands as if it were a microphone. When they posed on the stone steps, Adrian's hand steadied at her waist. Majadan, some treacherous part of her, went still under his palm. Between setups, she stepped aside to check her phone. A text from St. Joseph's. Surgery confirmed. Tuesday, 7:30 a.m., pre-op, Monday, noon. Relief surged so sharp it made her lightheaded. When she looked up, she found Adrian watching her from the edge of the terrace. "All set?" he asked. "Yes." She tucked the phone away. "Pre-op tomorrow." "I'll stay overnight." He nodded once. "I'll meet you there after the 6 o'clock with Tokyo." "You don't have to, I know," he said. The words were simple. The look, WASN. Single quotes. The photographer clapped. Back to the steps. "Let's chase this light." They did. The light ran. That was its nature. On Monday, the first real collision arrived. Wearing a press badge, Claire took the back steps down to the garage for the hospital. A canvas weekender slung over her shoulder. A man peeled away from a delivery truck, camera low at his hip. "Claire, over here one for the road. Did you sign a prenup? How long's the term? Are you planning a baby?" The last question knocked the breath out of her like a shove. She froze. He didn't. He took a step closer, lens up now. The shutter, a tiny machine gun. The driver moved fast, broad shoulders. A calm voice, a wall where there hadn't been one. "Back up. private drive. It's a public interest, pal, the photographer said, angling for a shot around him. A second voice cut cleanly through the air. No, it's not. Adrian. He crossed the garage in 6 strides, took the camera gently but decisively, and handed the man a business card instead. Council's number. You point that at my wife again on private property. You won't be able to afford batteries. The photographer muttered something about the First Amendment and backed into his van. The engine coughed to life. The van retreated. Claire hadn't realized she was shaking until Adrian set a hand between her shoulders briefly, almost formally. You okay? She nodded. I didn't expect that. I did, he said, and signaled to the driver. Go on. I'll be right behind you. In the car, she stared at the card he'd pressed into the photographer's palm. Blackwood Legal, ruthless reputation, sterling results. It should have made her feel like a client. Instead, she felt guarded, not by a contract. By him. Pre-op took all afternoon. Forms, signatures, a list of risks that looked far worse in print. Claire sat in the small hospital room after her mother fell asleep. Lights dimmed to a soft glow, the TV murmuring the weather to no one. She was rubbing at the ridge the ring had left on her finger when there was a soft knock. Adrian stepped in. Tie loosened, sleeves rolled once. A paper cup steamed in his hand. Tea, he said, holding it out. Nurse said chamomile didn't count as contraband. She took it. The heat did something the hospital blanket couldn't. Thanks for earlier, she said. In the garage. That wasn't about press, he said, leaning against the built-in cabinet. It was about lines. People think ours don't exist. They do. Lines, she echoed, and watched steam curl away like smoke from a signal fire no one else could see. Is that what this is, then? A year of drawing them. It's how we survive, he said. For the first time, he looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with ours. They sat in companionable quiet, the kind that doesn't ask questions it can't carry. After a minute, he glanced at the sleeping shape in the bed and then at Claire. You should try to rest. I will, she hesitated. You don't have to stay. I know, he said again. He didn't move. He left after 10, promising to be there at 7. He was there at 6:50, coffee in one hand, a granola bar in the other, the kind of breakfast you hand to someone you don't want falling over. The nurse raised her brows at him in the universal language of approval. Claire felt something else crack, then quieter than a laugh, softer than a sob, maybe a thaw. When they wheeled her mum toward the elevator, she gripped Claire's fingers with startling strength. Don't float away from me, her mum said. Her eyes flicked to Adrian, assessing, not unkind. And don't let him either. We won't, Claire promised. She didn't look at him when she said it. She felt him anyway, an inch closer, an ounce steadier. A presence she hadn't budgeted for and couldn't deny. The elevator doors closed. The floor numbers ticked down. Somewhere below, a team scrubbed in dot above them. In the part of the world where cameras and contracts mattered, the garden would be empty now, the photos already queued for morning posts. Down here, in the antiseptic light, there were no angles to hit, no statements to approve. Just breath and hope, and to people who had signed a line and kept finding others they hadn't meant to cross. Hospitals have their own weather, even when the sun is up. The halls feel overcast, air conditioning too cold, lights too bright. Time moving like honey, then all at once. Claire signed her mother in at 7:12 a.m. They wheeled. Mrs. Evans away at 7:28. A nurse with a cartoon bandage sticker on her badge saying, "We'll take good care of her, like a spell you say, because there's nothing else to say." Claire stood there a second after the doors swung shut. Fingers still curled like they were holding on. "Come on," Adrian said quietly. Waiting room. They found 2 end seats under a TV set, 2 silent headlines. A coffee machine gurgled in the corner. The news ticker scrawled someone else's crisis. Claire locked her hands together to stop them shaking. "You don't have to, I know," he said. "I'm here," she nodded, swallowed, nodded again. Her mouth tasted like copper and hospital soap at 8:10. An older man across the room started telling anyone who would listen about his granddaughter's softball team. At 8:25, a toddler melted down near the vending machines and fell asleep in a parent's lap 5 minutes later like nothing had happened. At 8:41, Claire's phone buzzed with a calendar reminder for a post-wedding content drop, and she swiped it away so hard she almost sent the phone across the tile dot. Adrian handed her a paper cup. Tea again. Chamomile steamed into her face, softening the edges. "You hate useless," she said after a minute, voice low. "I can tell." He glanced at the double doors to the OR corridor. "I hate being unable to affect outcomes." A beat. "It's not the same thing. What do you do with that?" "The not of plan for the part I can," he said, "and stay put for the part I can't." Her throat tightened. "Thank you for staying put." He nodded like he'd been thanked for choosing a tie dot at 9:03. His phone lit up with a board member's name. He silenced it. At 9:07, it lit again with Tokyo. He flipped it over. At 9:11, the TV ran a segment on some merger rumor with a Blackwood Division's logo blurred in the corner. Claire braced herself for him to stand. He didn't. "You're going to get yelled at," she said. "That's Donovan's hobby," he said. And his mouth ticked, but his knee had started bouncing. A tiny tell that said the notifications were drilling into him. "Tell me something not on a balance sheet," she said. To distract them both, he considered. "I can't whistle." She blinked. "At all. Not even close." "Show me." "No," she snorted. "Coward." "Absolutely," he said. And the word warmed something inside the cold morning. "Your turn," he said after a beat. "Tell me something not on your forms." "My first published piece was for a school paper," she said. "I wrote a profile on the lunch lady. She cried and gave me double tater tots for a month." "That's a strong ROI." "It was," Claire said. And for 3 seconds she wasn't a contract bride in a surgical waiting room. She was a kid with ink on her fingers and a woman who knew her name handing her a tray. The double doors swung once, twice for other families. Not for her. At 10:02, the surgeon's assistant called Claire's name, only to ask a billing form question. She answered, smiled the brittle smile of a person who won't cry at a receptionist, and came back to her seat with her heart punching. Adrian didn't say, "Calm down." He didn't say, "It's fine." He sat with her while the adrenaline drained, a steady presence at the edge of her peripheral vision. The way lampposts steady sidewalks. 11:31. The doors opened and the surgeon himself walked out, mask looped under his chin, eyes soft with the particular kindness of good news. "Claire?" he asked. She stood so fast, the chair legs screeched. "Yes, your mom did great," he said. "No surprises. We were able to repair without a graft extension. She's in recovery. You can see her in about an hour." The relief was so sudden it made her dizzy. She leaned forward, palms to her eyes. Laugh sobbed once, into the soft cuff of her sweater. When she looked up, Adrian was already there, a hand braced near her shoulder, not touching until she nodded. Then he squeezed, quick, grounding. "Thank you," she told the surgeon, words tumbling. "Thank you, thank you." He smiled like he'd heard it before and would never get tired of it. "Get some water. Your body's been in a surgery too." When the doctor left, Claire blew out a breath that had been waiting all morning. She turned to Adrian. "She's okay." "She is," he said, and for the first time since they met, the emotion in his voice wasn't pressed flat. It was there, thin and real. She wanted to hug him. She didn't. Instead, she took another sip of tea that had gone lukewarm and tasted perfect. Recovery rooms are small, deliberate, full of machines that beep at different tempos. An hour later, Claire stood by her mother's bed and smoothed her hair off her forehead. "Hey, Mum," she whispered. Mrs. Evans blinked, smiled the soft smile of morphine. "You got prettier," she said, then dozed again. Claire laughed and cried at the same time, which is a thing you can do, apparently. When she turned, Adrian was at the door, hands in his pockets so he wouldn't look like he was clutching anything. "She keeps complimenting me when I don't deserve it," Claire said, wiping at her cheeks with the heel of her hand. "She's right about today," he said. They traded the chair without words. She sat. He stood. She stood. He sat. At some point, a nurse came in to check lines, made a note, and said, "Spouse." At Adrian's shoulder, efficient and non-judgmental. "Yes," he said, and it was the cleanest yes he'd said all week. They drove back to the manor after 9. Road slick and quiet, the windshield wipers metronoming them home. The house had been turned down for the night. Claire climbed the stairs, paused at her door, and didn't go in. Instead, she padded back down to the kitchen, bare feet on tile, and opened the fridge like a person who lived there. Adrian walked in 5 minutes later. Tie gone, shirt open at the throat, sleeves rolled once. He stopped when he saw her at the stove, a pan heating. 2 slices of bread set out like a plan. "Grilled cheese," she said. "Celebratory cuisine, that's a strong move." "Don't get excited," she said, buttering the pan. "I only know 3 recipes, and all of them involve bread." He leaned against the counter, watching like she'd started a TED Talk. "What are the other 2? "French toast and—" "Toast," she said, and he huffed a laugh that surprised them both. They ate at the scarred prep table where the morning crew drank coffee. Plates balanced on forearms, feet hooked on chair rungs. It tasted like childhood and a new chapter. When she finished, Claire set her plate in the sink and turned, suddenly awkward in the quiet. "Thank you for today, for all of it. The garage, the waiting, the tea. You don't have to thank me," he said. "I know," she said. "I want to." He held her gaze a beat longer than the contract required. "You're welcome," she nodded, stepped past him, then stopped. "One more boundary," she said without looking back. "We celebrate the good days, no matter how they come." "Agreed," he said, as if she'd just negotiated the only clause that mattered. She went down the hall to her room. He stood in the kitchen a minute more, hands braced on the counter, eyes on the cooling pan like it might offer strategy. Then he washed the dishes, dried them, and put them back where they belonged. Upstairs, the house settled. Between their doors lay the same distance as last night's thick rug, thin trews, but the air felt warmer, as if the manor had acknowledged a change in the weather in the morning. There would be emails and headlines and a machine that never slept tonight. There was the quiet pride of a surgery gone right, the ghost of butter in the air, and the startling sense that they had survived something together that no contract had planned for. Mrs. Evans was stable by Wednesday and grumpy by Thursday, which the nurse said was the best sign of all. Claire brought her magazines and a cheap phone charger. Her mum brought sarcasm and a demand for pudding of a very specific brand. "You look different," her mum said, squinting at Claire's face like a jeweler. "Lighter, sleep," Claire lied. It wasn't just sleep. It was the memory of a waiting room where she hadn't sat alone. By Friday, the hospital sent them home with a stack of instructions and a diagram of a heart that looked like a Valentine had joined the army. Claire planned to spend the weekend hovering thermometer in one hand, water pitcher in the other until PR emailed to confirm attendance at an investor art gala that Saturday night. Boundaries, Claire texted Adrian. 2 hours, he replied. In and out. Fine, she wrote back. But I'm wearing flats. Acceptable, he sent, which somehow felt like a smile. The gallery occupied a Soho loft where exposed brick met white wine. The art on the walls was all edges and silence. People arrived in whispers of silk and summations of their portfolios. Claire pinballed between introductions, saying the names she'd been drilled on, letting the sea carry her toward a man with a mic who thanked everyone for loving art and commerce in equal measure. Adrian was precision beside her polite, unflappable, the kind of calm that made cameras behave. Every time they shifted across the room, a hand found her elbow just enough to suggest direction, never enough to claim it. The contract called for proximity. It did not explain the way her pulse kept stepping up when he looked down to see if she was still with him, 20 minutes in. A woman in a silver-column dress glided up and kissed the air near Adrian's cheek. "You disappeared," she said, like the city had been less itself without him. "Caroline," he said with courtroom warmth. "Good to see you." She turned to Claire with the curiosity of someone assessing an acquisition. "Claire, right. I've heard nothing about you," she added brightly, which was somehow worse than hearing something. "Lucky you," Claire said, matching the smile, and extended a hand. "Nice to meet you." Caroline's gaze flicked to Adrian, then back. "So are you, in art." "Contractually, I'm in many places," Claire said. The quip landed. Adrian's mouth twitched. Caroline's didn't. "Well," Caroline said, recovering, "I'll borrow him for a minute. We're placing a sculpture for the auction." She slid a hand toward Adrian's sleeve like it had always been hers. Something primal and ridiculous sparked in Claire an urge to step between them and flash a marriage certificate. She did not move. She was practical. She had signed things. She set her jaw and nodded instead. Adrian glanced at Claire, a micro-check-in, before following Caroline toward a steel piece that looked like gravity doing calculus. Claire drifted the other way, toward a landscape that reminded her of church basements and bake sales, something honest and doable. "Not your world." A voice said at her shoulder. She turned to find a man about 40, beard neat, suit less aggressive than the room's average. His name tag read Marcus Hale. Hale Capital. "I like art that looks like it remembers people live near it," Claire said. He smiled. "A radical stance here." He looked over her shoulder. "You're with Blackwood." "Tonight," she said. "Then you must have interesting paperwork," Marcus said lightly, but he held up a hand when she stiffened. "Kidding, mostly. I've done deals with Adrian. He's as advertised. How's he advertised? She asked, unable to help it. Unsleeping, Marcus said. Not unkind, just uncompromising. He tilted his head. You soften a room. It's a useful skill. Before she could decide if that was a compliment, Adrian reappeared. His eyes flicked from Marcus to Claire as if he was checking the positions on a chessboard. Marcus, Adrian said. You two met. We did, Marcus said. Good to see you, Adrian. Your wife has tastes that could save this place. He nodded toward the landscape. You should buy it and scandalize your board. We scandalize them in other ways, Adrian said. Deadpan, and Marcus laughed, excused himself, and moved on. You okay? Adrian asked, low. I'm fine, she said. Caroline has great spatial awareness. And hands. He huffed a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. Caroline wants what Caroline wants. And what do you want? The question escaped before she could throttle it. His gaze held hers for a beat too long. 2 hours, he said finally, defaulting to rules. And then we go home. Flats, she said, looking down at her shoes. Good choice, he said. And the way he said it wrote later in a language she could almost read. The auctioneer clicked through lots. Money moved via eyebrow lift. Claire pretended to understand what made one painting worth a high school's annual budget and another worth a used car. When the string quartet took 5, a slow song from somewhere in the 90s slid into the air velvet. Unafraid of being melodic, Adrian's hand brushed hers. Dance. She blinked. In public, in a room full of cameras. He tipped his head toward a shadow where a photographer was pretending to be abstract. Absolutely. Your risk tolerance is improving, she said. I brought legal, he replied, and offered his hand. She put her hand in his. The room thinned. He set a careful palm at her back, not the polite place it went for photos, but an inch lower, where nerves notice. They moved, not polished, not performative, just people in a box of light, with a song that made breathing easier. Caroline is watching, Claire murmured. She watches outcomes, he said. Not process. And what is this? She asked, and immediately wished she hadn't. He didn't answer right away. His jaw worked once. Something I didn't put in a spreadsheet. They turned. The city leaned against the windows like a friend with secrets. Claire's cheek brushed his shoulder. Her chest did a small, traitorous lift. When the song ended, they didn't let go right away. The room applauded the quartet as if the applause could cover the silence that followed. Adrian stepped back first, professional again in a blink. Careful, he said softly. Your makeup, is it tragic? It's fine, he said, and the words sounded like yes to a question she hadn't dared ask. They made it to the car at the 1:50 mark. Adrian kept his promise. The driver slid into traffic. The city moved around them like weather. Marcus Hale, Claire said into the quiet. He thinks you're on losing. He would, Adrian said. He's only seen me in rooms designed for people like me and me. He looked over. You keep showing up in rooms that aren't designed for you and refusing to leave. She swallowed. Is that an insult? It's a compliment, he said, and turned back to the window so she wouldn't see the part of his mouth that betrayed how much he meant it. They stopped outside the manor. Claire reached for the door handle. Adrian touched her wrist knot, stopping, just delaying. Thank you for tonight, he said. For being good at this, she echoed, the most elastic word in their lexicon. He didn't drop her wrist. And for earlier this week, he said, "For letting me stay," she could have made a joke. She could have said, "You didn't give me a choice." She didn't. "You made it easier to breathe," she said instead. Something moved in his face, like the first fault line of spring in a frozen river. "Good night." "Claire," he said, voice low. "Good night." Adrian, upstairs. Claire set her flats side by the door like sentries. She washed off the makeup that made her look more expensive than she felt and stood by the dark window. In the garden below, the magazine's floral arch still glowed faintly from string lights they hadn't bothered to take down. It looked like a doorway to somewhere she wasn't sure she had permission to go. Down the hall, Adrian sat at his desk with a blank document open and his hands locked behind his neck. He could write a merger term sheet in 8 minutes flat. He could not write the thing pulsing in his throat. 2 hours at a gala. 3 hours in a waiting room. 10 minutes on a dance floor. The numbers didn't add up to anything he knew, which, for a man who had always known, felt like heat. He closed the laptop without saving and, for once, let the house be quiet enough to hear his own pulse. It did not sound like rain anymore. It sounded like a beginning. The headline hit before breakfast. Blackwood, back with Caroline. Midnight exit from private club under it. 3 photos Adrian, helping Caroline into a car outside a West Village members-only spot, his hand at the small of her back. Caroline smiling up like the camera belonged to her. A third angle blurred by rain that made them look closer than they were. Claire saw it on her phone at the kitchen's scarred prep table, the same place where grilled cheese had tasted like relief. The article was pure insinuation, words like cited sources. Again, but the pictures screamed louder than nuance. Her stomach did the slow elevator drop. Mrs. Mason slid a mug near her elbow. "Don't read comments," she said, which was how you knew the staff had already seen everything. Claire locked the screen and stared at the wood grain until it doubled. "It's nothing," she told herself. "Optics. Rooms you weren't in." The part of her that had danced on Saturday felt stupid anyway. By 8, the Manor's front door opened. Adrian came in with rain on his cuffs and a storm under his skin. He saw the phone on the table, saw the headline, and something in his jaw tightened. "It's not what it looks like," he said. "Okay," Claire answered. The word tried for neutral. It landed brittle. He set his briefcase on a chair but didn't sit. Caroline called a meeting about a foundation pledge that was getting misused. She has access. I took the meeting because money was involved, not because he stopped. Because the more you explain, the softer the ground gets. "Why private?" Claire asked. "Why midnight?" "Because that's when people like us get left alone," he said. "Or used to." She nodded once, eyes steady. "Do I need to be worried?" No, the answer was fast. Too fast. She couldn't tell he hesitated, then added, "There's also an NDA on a related matter." "I can't," he made a short, frustrated gesture. "I can't say more, yet." Claire inhaled, slow. The contract had taught her the shape of limits. Still, the word can't hit like a door closing in her face. "So I'm supposed to hold steady while the internet writes its own ending." "I'll get legal to threaten a takedown," he said. "That's not the same as you saying something," she said, and hated how naked the sentence sounded. He opened his mouth. Then his phone lit up with Tokyo. He flipped it face down, but the air had already changed. "Do you trust me?" he asked. "Do you want the contract answer or the human one?" she said. He didn't blink. The human one. I'm trying, she said, and it came out too quiet. He nodded once. Like that hurt in a place he'd never admit to pressing. By noon. The story was on business sites with softer language and harder edges. Blackwood scene with philanthropist Caroline Avery as questions swirl around. It was less about romance than leverage. It still got clicks. Claire texted Donovan, "Can we put out anything?" Donovan, drafting. "We'll say the meeting was about a charitable discrepancy." No personal comment. She stared at no personal comment until the words looked like static. At 2, she left for St. Joseph's to sit with her mother. Outside the Manor's garage, a different photographer lurked by the hedges. Claire. "Over here did he cheat? Are you staying for the money? Is the marriage even real?" Her hand went cold on the car door handle. The driver moved between them, but the questions kept coming. Bright and mean. "Enough," Adrian said, appearing like he'd been summoned. He stepped forward, low voice ironed flat. "You're trespassing again." Last warning. The photographer lifted his lens anyway. Adrian didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Pick a different hobby. The camera dropped. The man retreated to his sedan, muttering about public figures and thin skin. In the car, the anger in Claire's chest melted into something softer and worse. "Thank you," she said. "Lines," he said again, and that should have comforted her. It didn't. Lines kept people safe. They also kept them apart. In her mum's room, the world got small enough to hold. Mrs. Evans dozed. The machines hummed. A cooking show taught pasta to people who would never make it. Claire sat in the visitor's chair, phone face down, ring catching the thin hospital light. "Trouble," her mum murmured without opening her eyes. "Internet," Claire said. "Ah," her mum said. "The town square with more snakes." Claire smiled despite herself. "It'll pass. Everything does," her mum said. "Except character. That stays or it doesn't." Claire glanced at the door. He had shown up at dawn with coffee. He had stayed in the waiting room. He had stood in front of cameras twice now. Her chest squeezed. Trust is a bridge, she thought. You still have to step on it to find out if it holds. Her phone buzzed. A push alert. Blackwood Camp declines to comment on Avery outing. Under it, the photo again. She turned the screen over and pressed her thumb into the indent the ring had made in her skin. Trying, she thought. She was trying. That night, the manor felt colder than the weather. Claire skipped the formal dining room and made toast in the kitchen. Adrian came in late, suit still on his shoulders, like he hadn't had time to take it off or didn't trust what would happen if he did. "Statements out," he said. "We framed it as charity oversight." "Good," she said. Buttering a second slice like it took both hands, he leaned on the counter, looking at the window over the sink like it had an answer. "This is going to happen again. The charity meetings or the headlines?" She asked. "Yes," he said. She put the knife down. "Then you need to figure out how to make room for me in the parts you can't talk about." He turned. "That's not how NDAs work." "I know," she said. "Find another way, then." "I can live with privacy. I can't live with vacuum." The word landed between them like a glass you don't mean to drop. He rubbed a hand over his jaw. "I'll try. Trying isn't a strategy," she said, softer than it looked. He almost smiled. "Now you sound like me." "Maybe you needed to hear it," she said. They looked at each other across, 3 feet of tile and a house full of witnesses who were all portraits. He picked up his briefcase. Early day tomorrow, of course, she said. Good night, Claire. Good night, Adrian. She didn't sleep. At 2, she packed a small bag and texted Donovan, staying at the hospital a couple nights. Donovan noted. Driver at 8. At 8, she left a note on the prep table mams a few days. Call if you need anything signed, and a second note under it she didn't sign. I'm still trying. In the driveway. As the car pulled away, she caught sight of Adrian at the upstairs window, a figure behind glass, still as a photograph. He lifted a hand a fraction, like a reflex he couldn't file anywhere. She lifted hers back, then faced forward. The headlines would burn themselves out, or they wouldn't. Legal could push. PR could steer. Contracts could hold. All of that might matter. But in the quiet space, just beyond the reach of those systems, a different story was taking shape, one where a woman decided that trying needed room, and a man realized that lines weren't the same thing as connection. They were still married in every way that could be notarized, and yet driving toward a hospital that smelled like hope and bleach. Claire felt farther away than the miles on the odometer should allow. Hospitals make time elastic. Claire stayed 2 nights at St. Joseph's, memorizing the rhythm of her mum's breathing, trading small talk with nurses, and answering texts from Donovan about schedule holds with one-word replies. Adrian sent coffee the first morning and flowers the second, each with a card that said here and still here. He didn't come by. She didn't ask him to. The headlines dimmed. Not because anyone cared less, but because something shinier arrived to trend. By the 3rd day, the story was a second-page rumor. The space between Claire and Adrian, however, felt first page. He called the morning she brought her mum home. How is she? Better, Claire said. Tired, bossy. She told me to stop folding towels the wrong way. He exhaled a small laugh. I can send someone to help. I've got it. Silence edged in. I can clear tonight, he said. We could talk. Okay, she said. She meant it. He didn't make it. At 9, Donovan texted that the Tokyo deal had gone sideways and Adrian was in a war room. At 10:30, a courier dropped a bag with soup and bread and a not train check. I'm sorry. Claire set the note next to the sink and watched it curl as it dried. She washed the bowl. She washed the spoon. She washed her hands like it might scrub the ache out. The next night he came by late. Tie loosened, apology already on his face. Claire met him on the front steps of the manor, her jacket zipped, keys in her hand. We keep missing each other, he said. We do, she said. Her voice was steady. The steadiness scared her. I didn't choose Tokyo over you. You chose it over tonight, she said. I understand why. It still counts. He flinched, a fraction. I'm trying, I know, she said, and heard what she didn't want to, the thinness in it. Trying had been the bridge she kept walking alone. She drew a breath. I'm going to stay with my mum for a while. Not just nights. I need to figure out what I'm doing here. Besides smiling for cameras and guessing which doors I'm not allowed to open. This is a contract, he said. Carefully. It has terms. It is a marriage, she shot back, quieter. It has people. The wind moved the beech trees. The house listened. I'm not leaving, she clarified. I'm stepping back. I need air. How long? I don't know. He nodded like he was agreeing to a risk analysis he hated. Okay, She waited for him to ask her to stay. He didn't. He waited for her to change her mind. She didn't. Good night, Adrian. Good night, Claire. She walked to the car. He stood on the steps with his hands in his pockets, like a man who didn't know what to do with them when they weren't holding anything together. The next morning, a PR email asked if she'd still attend a museum breakfast. Claire typed no, deleted it. Typed reschedule, deleted that, closed the laptop, and drove back to Queens, where towels were folded the right way and nobody asked her. For a quote, the quiet helped until it didn't. In the small hours, she stared at the ceiling and admitted the thing she'd been dodging. She wasn't fleeing optics. She was fleeing the ache of loving someone who treated feeling as a liability. She could live without a statement. She couldn't live with an empty room between them. The truth arrived sideways. Like most important things, 3 days into Claire's break, a story broke about a charity director indicted for siphoning funds. The piece cited source documents. It mentioned a midnight meeting at a private club where a donor and a board member flagged irregularities. There were no names. Anyone who knew, knew. Claire read it twice and sat down on the edge of her bed, the room circling. Caroline's photo, the club. Adrian's hand at her back, not because he was hers, but because he was escorting. A witness out of a storm he was trying to end. Her phone buzzed. Donovan, are you seeing the news? Blackwood Philanthropy is clear. Mr. Blackwood will issue a formal statement at 4p.m. Claire typed. Deleted, typed again. Thanks. At 4, Adrian stood at a podium in a navy suit and said, charitable dollars should do what they promise, help people. When they don't, we fix it. Quietly when we can, publicly when we must. He didn't mention midnight. He didn't mention Caroline. He didn't mention that he'd taken hits he could have avoided by letting the story rot. He didn't have to. The line was there. You could see it once you knew where to look. Claire drove to the manor before she could think. The sun was dropping. The house glowed like it remembered it had a heart. He met her in the library, tie off, sleeves rolled once. He looked like he hadn't slept and didn't plan to until the world steadied. I saw, she said. He nodded. I should have found a way to tell you anyway. Yes, she said. And I should have asked again instead of letting a headline be the only answer. They stared at each other across the rug that had witnessed everything and forgiven nothing. He spoke first. I can't promise a life without NDAs or crises at midnight. I can promise that if something touches us, it doesn't stay in the vault. You'll know. Even if it costs me something, it will, she said. That's what it means. He exhaled, and it sounded like admission. It does. She stepped closer. I don't want to be an optical illusion. I want to be a person you tell the unpretty parts to. He flinched, then nodded once. Okay, he swallowed. Will you come back? I didn't move the furniture, she said, a small half smile. I just parked somewhere else. His mouth quirked in answer, then steadied. Stay tonight. Don't decide the rest yet. Deal, she said, because contracts can be useful when you write the right ones. That night, he didn't hover. He didn't make speeches. He sat on the floor with her in the library and told her about his grandfather's empire and the 1,000 uses of the word stability. She told him about a 7th-grade newspaper and a lunch lady who gave her double tater tots. He tried to whistle and failed so hard they both cried laughing. The line between them did not vanish. It moved. The board breakfast was the next morning. Claire didn't go. She made pancakes at the manor and left a plate in a warming drawer because Mrs. Mason swore he didn't eat mornings, which is why he was intolerable by noon. At 9, Adrian texted a photo of an empty plate. Ate them, did not die. Claire, stability gains. Adrian, significant, at noon, he called. Can you come by the office at 5? There's something we should do there. Homework, she teased. Something like that, he said, and she could hear the outline of a smile at 5. She found him in the conference room, the skyline a blue river beyond the glass. On the table, a slim folder. Inside, a contract amendment. She scanned the first page and froze. You're removing the termination clause. I'm replacing it, he said, with a choice clause. She read. The amended agreement set the 1-year term aside and replaced it with a 30-day window, at the end where either of them could opt out without penalty, but only after a private conversation recorded on paper in their own handwriting stating why. No lawyers, no PR, no performance. A promise to say the quiet part out loud before any door closed. It's unusual, she said, throat tight. I know contracts, he said. They end things clean because people won't do the messy part. I don't want clean. I want true. If we end, it'll be because we sat in a room and said the thing, not because the calendar did it for us. She looked up. Is this your way of asking you to stay? He said. No, that part is simpler. He took a breath that sounded like stepping off a cliff and came around the table. He didn't kneel. He didn't produce a ring. He took her hands, both of them, and held her like the room wasn't glass. Claire, he said, voice low and sure in a way she'd never heard before. I married you to steady a company. I fell in love with you and discovered I'm the one who needed steadying. I love your questions, your boundaries, your cheap tea, your courage. I love that you make grilled cheese when the world demands caviar. I love that you stayed even when staying asked more of you than you'd agreed to give. I'm not asking for a year. I'm asking for every day you're willing to choose. Me, and I'm promising to choose you back. Tears blurred her vision. You're you, she managed. I am, he said, and I am more when I'm with you. Sign your amendment, she whispered. He did. She signed under his name. New clause, she said, breathless. We celebrate the good days. He smiled all the way into his eyes. Agreed. He kissed her. Then no angles, no optics, no choreography. Just a people who had rewritten their contract by writing down the truth. The next week, they cancelled 2 appearances and told PR to cope. They took Mrs. Evans to the botanical garden. They bought the not cool landscape from the gallery. They learned how each other liked coffee and quiet and the first 20. Minutes after walking in the door, the board didn't implode. The press got bored. The house felt less like a museum and more like a place where someone might take their shoes off mid-sentence. They were still who they were. He worked too much. She pushed too hard. They didn't fix themselves. They chose each other inside the mess. And that, it turned out, was the kind of stability no dynasty could buy. 6 months later, the South Garden was full of late roses and bad magazine props. The floral arch still leaned against a hedge because no one had remembered to haul it away. Claire stood under it anyway, barefoot on warm stone, a notebook in her hand. Adrian walked out in shirt sleeves. carrying 2 iced teas and a look that said he'd escaped something unnecessary. Lunch with the senators? She asked. Cancelled, he said. Not by me. Miracles, she said, taking a tea. He nodded at the arch. We should get rid of that. We could keep it, she said. Doorways are useful. He stepped under it with her. To what? Whatever's next. He looked down at her, sunlight caught in the grey of his eyes. I'm in. Sign here, she said, tapping the notebook. On the page, in her messy handwriting, was a list titled Good Days, Grilled Cheese. Marcus's bad joke, the nurse who called him spouse, pancakes, rain on glass, you dash staying. He took the pen. He added, you coming back. She looked at the line and then at him. Deal. They stood in the doorway of something that had started as a document and turned into a life. Behind them, the house exhaled. Ahead of them, the garden spread out like a map without borders. They didn't promise forever. They promised today, and then today again. Somewhere downtown, a headline churned and died. Somewhere uptown, a board, worried about a thing that would never matter as much as this. On the south lawn of a house that had learned to be a home. A billionaire and his not and paper anymore wife laughed at nothing, shared a too-sweet tea, and stepped forward, together. No choreography, no pre-approved quote, no optics, just the ongoing, ordinary miracle of choosing and being chosen. And that was the whole story.